I watched Carter Evans deliver the news like he was reading stock prices. He sat behind his polished oak desk, adjusting his designer glasses, and wore that typical master of business administration smile. It was the same condescending expression he used when he explained why my 11 years of supply chain expertise was legacy thinking that needed upgrading. He looked at me, folded his hands, and spoke with a calm, practiced corporate tone. "We are restructuring the logistics division," he said. "We have found someone who can modernize our operations for 60% of your current compensation. Digital transformation is key to our future growth, you understand. We need someone who can implement automated dashboards rather than relying on outdated systems. My name is David Ross. I am 49 years old. I have been working since I was 17, and I know what dedication looks like when someone actually values it. I gave 11 years of my life to Summit Distribution Group, spent 11 years building a logistics network that moved $200 million worth of automotive parts annually across 8 states. When I started, our distribution centers were complete disasters. Parts were scattered everywhere. There was no systematic rotation. Suppliers threatened to drop us because orders kept getting botched. The previous logistics manager had quit after 6 months, claiming the complexity was impossible to handle. I took the job because I needed steady work. My wife, Sarah, was building her real estate practice, while Brandon and Luke were preparing for college. During those first 8 months, I worked until midnight most nights. I learned every part we carried, every supplier delivery schedule, which manufacturers were reliable, and which ones needed constant monitoring. I figured out that seasonal parts needed specific rotation patterns. Winter transmission components could not sit in hot warehouses during summer, and heavy brake assemblies required special handling equipment. I built tracking systems that monitored everything in real time, created zone optimization algorithms that maximized efficiency, and negotiated with suppliers until they trusted our operation again. It took 3 years before everything ran smoothly. After that, the system just worked. Parts flowed seamlessly from manufacturers to dealers, inventory levels stayed optimal, suppliers stopped complaining and started praising our operation. My boss back then, who retired shortly after, used to say that I made complex logistics look effortless. Then Carter Evans showed up. 18 months ago, corporate transferred him from the Chicago office. He was 31 years old with a fresh business degree and zero hands-on logistics experience. They gave him the division because he talked about optimization and automation in every presentation. He never asked me how our systems worked. He never wanted to understand the relationships I had built with suppliers or why certain processes existed. He just wanted dashboards that made him look innovative when he reported to senior leadership. "Get me real-time analytics," he would say. "I need key performance indicators that demonstrate operational excellence. Build me a presentation I can use with corporate." I did it every time because that was my job. But Carter acted like the results happened automatically, like anyone could manage what I had spent over a decade perfecting. He would tell people in meetings that our automation systems basically ran themselves, describing it as a very streamlined operation. It was not streamlined by accident. It was 11 years of experience disguised as simplicity, because I had eliminated every inefficiency through hard-earned experience. Carter did not see any of that. He saw a $105,000 salary he could cut by hiring some kid who knew spreadsheets and thought logistics was just data entry. "We have already identified your replacement," Carter continued, still wearing that corporate smile. "He starts on Monday. You have until the end of the day to document your processes and transition your responsibilities." "Transition to whom?" I asked. "You said he starts on Monday. Today is Thursday." "Create a knowledge transfer document," Carter replied. "It should not take long since you have always emphasized how systematic everything is." I never said that. Carter was the one who claimed the system ran itself, but arguing would not change anything. He had already decided probably weeks ago, and this conversation was just a corporate formality. "Fine," I said. His smile flickered for a second. He probably expected me to argue, maybe beg for another chance or explain why the division would fail without me. I did not give him that satisfaction. I stood up, walked out of his office, and returned to my own workspace. It was not a big space, just enough room for a desk, some filing cabinets, and shelves full of supplier manuals, parts catalogs, and vendor contracts. It contained 11 years of information that could never be documented in a single afternoon. But I made the attempt anyway. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. I listed supplier contact information, delivery schedules, which vendors needed a 3-week lead time for transmission rebuilds, which ones consistently ran late with brake components, and required buffer stock, parts with special storage requirements, difficult customers who needed extra attention, how to read the optimization algorithms I had developed, and when to adjust seasonal inventory rotations for winter equipment. 6 pages in, I realized how pointless this was. My replacement would not understand any of this without context, without seeing the operation in real time, and without making the inevitable mistakes and learning from them like I had. This was not information you could learn from a document. It was institutional knowledge built through experience. Carter walked by once around 2 in the afternoon. "How is the documentation coming?" he asked. "It is coming," I replied. He nodded and left. Nobody else acknowledged what was happening. Word travels fast in offices like this, but people keep their heads down. Everyone needs their paycheck. Everyone has bills. I understood that completely. The afternoon felt surreal. Normal warehouse sounds continued around me. Forklifts moved pallets, radio chatter echoed between zones, and delivery trucks backed up to loading docks. All the systems I had built functioned perfectly while I sat there writing their obituary. Around 4 o'clock, I finished writing what I could. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. I took a coffee mug from our company picnic 5 years ago, a jacket I kept for cold warehouse walks, some family photos, and a small cactus that had somehow survived despite minimal office light. It was not much to show for 11 years of dedication. I walked out to my truck, placed the box in the passenger seat, and drove home. That night, I sat in my truck in our driveway, staring at the lit windows of our house. It was a comfortable suburban home, the kind you buy when you think your career is stable and your future is secure. Inside, Sarah was grading real estate contracts, while Brandon and Luke were busy with their homework. These normal Thursday evening activities suddenly felt incredibly fragile. I had not told them yet. I sat there for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to find the right words. How do you tell your family that the foundation they have relied on for over a decade has been pulled out from under you? I finally walked inside and found Sarah exactly where I expected. She looked up, smiled, and then her smile faded as she saw the look on my face. Brandon wandered in from the living room, a calculus textbook under his arm, and Luke followed, still holding his guitar. Both boys sensed the shift in atmosphere immediately. "I got fired today," I said. The silence in the room stretched for 10 seconds. Then Sarah stood up, walked over, and wrapped her arms around me. She did not say anything at first, just held on tight. The boys stayed where they were, processing the news in silence. "What happened?" Sarah asked finally, pulling back to look at me. "My manager decided he could replace me with someone cheaper," I said. "He called it digital transformation, but it is just cost-cutting. He hired someone else to run the spreadsheets." "That is insane," Brandon said, his voice rising. "You built that entire logistics network. You have told us stories about how chaotic it was before you arrived. How can they just let you go?" "What about college?" Luke asked quietly. He was a sophomore at the State University, and Brandon was a junior at the Institute of Technology. Between the two of them, we were looking at $40,000 in tuition bills for the next year. It was a massive sum, and without my steady income, it felt like an insurmountable mountain. "We will figure it out," Sarah said firmly, though I could see the calculations already starting in her mind. Her real estate commissions were decent when they came, but they were highly unpredictable. My salary had been the steady foundation that allowed her to build her business without constant financial pressure. "Do you have severance?" Sarah asked. "They did not mention any," I replied. "Carter just told me to pack my things and leave. I do not think this was processed through normal human resources channels." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, frowning. "I am not sure yet," I admitted. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. 25 years of marriage meant Sarah knew when to give me space to process. But I could feel her tension in the way she tossed and turned next to me. Neither of us slept. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mixture of dread and relief. I did not have to go to the warehouse. I did not have to deal with Carter. But the uncertainty was suffocating. As I drank my coffee, I thought about Frank Lawson. Frank was the vice president of operations. He managed 6 distribution centers and 400 employees, and Carter reported to a regional director under him. But Frank and I had a relationship that went back 7 years. It had started during a major production crisis. One of our key suppliers had tried to overcharge us for emergency transmission components. They knew we were desperate to keep our assembly lines moving, so they marked up their prices by 300%, expecting us to pay without question. Our loss prevention team wanted to accept the charges, arguing we had no choice. They asked for my input, and I asked for 4 hours to find a solution. I called every contact I had in the industry. I found a smaller manufacturer in Ohio that had the exact components in stock and was willing to ship them immediately at our standard contract price. I saved the company $180,000 on that single transaction. Frank heard about it and called me personally to thank me. He said that kind of creative problem-solving was exactly what the company needed. Since then, we had established a routine. Every few months we would meet for lunch at a small burger joint near the main distribution center. It was nothing fancy, just burgers, fries, and honest conversation. He would ask about warehouse operations, the challenges we faced, and how my family was doing. Frank valued results over corporate hierarchy, remembering who saved the company money when it mattered. We had lunch scheduled for today, Friday, at 4:30 in the afternoon. We always met late because his mornings were consumed by corporate meetings. I looked at my watch. It was 4:15. I had spent the day in a daze and I had forgotten to cancel. Should I tell him what happened? Or should I just send a polite text and cancel the meeting? I decided to go. I needed the advice of someone who understood the industry, and Frank might even know of openings at other companies. I drove to the restaurant, feeling hollow. As I pulled into the parking lot, my phone began to buzz with Frank's name on the screen. I decided to let it go, planning to walk inside and meet him in person. But it rang again immediately, and then a third time. Realizing something might be wrong, I answered. "Where are you, David?" Frank's voice had an edge I had never heard before. "We have the quarterly logistics review starting in 20 minutes. The executive team is here, and your manager keeps saying you are unavailable." "What is going on?" "I did not quit, Frank," I said slowly. "Carter Evans fired me yesterday morning. He told me he found someone who could do my job for 60% of my salary." There was complete silence on the other end of the line. For 5 seconds, all I could hear was the hum of background noise from Frank's office. "He did what?" Frank asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "He fired me," I repeated. "He told me to pack my things and write a transition document for my replacement." "I am looking at the meeting agenda right now," Frank said, and I could hear the anger vibrating in his words. "You are listed as the main presenter for the Operational Efficiency Report, the Supplier Performance Analysis, and the Distribution Center Optimization Results. We do this every quarter, David. You have never missed one." "I know," I said. "I had the reports ready. But Carter told me I was done." "Stay near your phone," Frank said. He hung up without another word. I sat in my truck waiting and imagining the scene at corporate. Frank Lawson was quiet, but his authority was absolute. If he discovered his lead presenter was dismissed without his knowledge, there would be consequences. 25 minutes passed in agonizing silence. I watched families walk into the restaurant, laughing and talking, completely unaware of the storm brewing in my life. Then my phone vibrated. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number with a corporate area code. "Hello, David. This is Diane Porter from Human Resources," a woman's voice said. She sounded professional, but there was a distinct tension in her tone. "I am calling to clarify some details regarding a transaction processed under your employee identification number. Did you meet with Carter Evans yesterday morning?" "Yes, I did," I replied, my heart rate quickening. "And did he inform you that your employment with Summit Distribution Group was terminated, effective immediately?" "Yes. He said the logistics division was being restructured and that he had found someone who could do my job for 60% of my salary. I heard the distinct sound of rapid typing in the background. I see, Diane said, pausing for a moment. Did he provide you with any official severance documentation, exit procedures, or information regarding your benefits? No, I said. He told me to pack my personal belongings and spend the rest of the day writing a transition document for my replacement. I left the building around 4 o'clock. The typing stopped. There was a long, heavy silence. David, this is very important, Diane continued. Our system shows that a signed document titled Voluntary Resignation and Waiver of Claims was uploaded to your personnel file yesterday afternoon. The document states that you decided to resign voluntarily to pursue other opportunities and that you agreed to waive all rights to severance, compensation, and legal recourse in exchange for an immediate release from your contract. Did you sign this document? My hand tightened around the steering wheel. Absolutely not, I said, my voice shaking with sudden anger. I have never seen that document in my life. I did not resign. I was fired in his office. He told me my replacement was starting on Monday. I would never sign away my severance after 11 years of service. The typing resumed, faster this time, accompanied by a soft sigh from the HR representative. Thank you for confirming that, David. This is an extremely serious matter. We are going to halt the processing of this separation immediately. I am initiating an internal investigation into how this document was submitted and signed. Do you have any evidence of your conversation with Carter? Only the 6-page transition document I compiled on my laptop, which I saved to my personal drive before leaving, I said. And the warehouse security logs will show that I packed my office into a cardboard box and was escorted out by security at the end of the day. A resigning employee does not leave with a box of personal items under escort. Please keep all of those files and do not delete anything, Diane said. Someone from our legal team will be in touch with you shortly. Please do not discuss this with anyone else at the company. She hung up, leaving me in the quiet cabin of my truck. I sat there, stunned. Carter had not just fired me to save money. He had committed a crime. He had forged my signature on a legal document to make it look like I had walked away voluntarily. I immediately called Robert Harrison, an old friend from college who worked as an employment attorney in the city. I explained the entire situation, from Carter's sudden announcement to the phone call from HR. Robert listened without interrupting, only humming in agreement as I recounted the details. He told me to meet him at his office immediately. An hour later, I was in Robert's office while he reviewed the notes. This is classic corporate desperation, Robert said, leaning back in his leather chair. Carter wanted to show immediate cost savings to impress the board during the quarterly review. Firing an 11-year veteran would trigger a mandatory corporate review, which requires approval from the regional director in human resources. It would also require a substantial severance package, probably 6 months of your salary, which would eat into his projected savings. So he forged my signature, I said. Exactly. Robert nodded. He created a fake resignation to bypass the approval process and avoid paying you, but he made a fatal error. In our state, signing another person's name on a legal contract or waiver without authorization, with the intent to defraud, is a direct violation of California Penal Code Section 470, which defines the crime of forgery. It is a serious offense. What does that mean for the waiver? I asked. It means the document is void ab initio, Robert explained, emphasizing the Latin phrase. It is a legal doctrine meaning void from the beginning. Because the contract was created through a fraudulent act, it has no legal standing, no power, and is treated as if it never existed. The waiver of claims is completely invalid. They cannot use it to protect themselves. So what do? We wait, Robert smiled, a cold, calculated look in his eyes. HR knows they have a massive liability on their hands. Carter Evans did not just violate company policy, he committed a felony while acting as an agent of the corporation. If this goes to court, they will face public exposure, criminal investigations, and a massive lawsuit. Let them finish their internal audit. When they call us, we will dictate the terms. I drove home feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The uncertainty of the previous night was replaced by a sharp, clear sense of purpose. I walked into the kitchen and told Sarah everything. For the first time in 48 hours, she laughed. He really thought he was the smartest man in the room, she said, shaking her head. He did, I agreed. But he forgot that systems are built on rules, and he just broke the most important one. Over the weekend, Carter Evans called me repeatedly, but I did not answer. I spent the time with my family, enjoying a quiet Saturday barbecue. The worry of the previous week was gone, replaced by confidence. On Monday morning, my phone rang again at 7 o'clock. It was Carter. This time, I decided to answer, wanting to hear him explain himself. "David, thank goodness you answered," Carter said. His voice was hoarse and lacked all of its previous corporate polish. He sounded completely exhausted. "We have a major situation here. The replacement candidate we brought in on Friday morning quit after only 1 day. He said the workload was completely different from what was advertised and that the database was too complex. The quarterly review was postponed to this afternoon, and corporate is demanding the operational efficiency report. I cannot access the optimization algorithms on your laptop, and the warehouse manager says only you know the supplier contact schedules." I sat at my kitchen table and said nothing. The silence was deafening. "David?" Carter pleaded, his voice cracking. "Please, I need you to come in. This was all just a huge administrative misunderstanding. I have spoken with the regional director, and we are prepared to offer you an immediate compensation adjustment. We can increase your salary to $120,000. We can pretend none of this happened," I smiled, looking out the window at the morning sun. "My attorney will be contacting your corporate legal department in exactly 2 hours, Carter," I said calmly. "I suggest you spend your morning preparing for that quarterly review. Good luck." I hung up before he could respond. It felt incredibly satisfying to cut the connection, knowing that the spreadsheet manager was finally facing the consequences of his actions. At 9 o'clock that morning, Robert Harrison sent a formal legal package to the General Counsel of Summit Distribution Group. The package was comprehensive. It contained a copy of the forged voluntary resignation and waiver of claims form, alongside a dozen examples of my actual signature from my 11 years of employment contracts. It included my sworn affidavit detailing Carter's statements in his office, the security logs showing my forced exit, and a detailed breakdown of the legal violations. Robert's letter was direct. We informed Summit's legal department that their agent, Carter Evans, had committed a felony under California Penal Code Section 470 by forging my signature on a corporate document to defraud me of my severance benefits. Because of this fraudulent act, the resignation was void ab initio, and the waiver of claims was completely invalid. The letter demanded that Summit immediately terminate Carter Evans for gross misconduct, reinstate my termination status as involuntary, and pay a settlement of $200,000 in severance and damages to resolve the dispute. If they refused, we would file a public lawsuit within 48 hours and report the forgery to the local district attorney. The reaction from corporate was almost instantaneous. A company of that size cannot afford a public scandal involving forgery, especially one committed by a manager to manipulate corporate budget numbers. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, Summit's chief legal officer called Robert. They agreed to all of our demands without negotiation. Carter Evans was terminated for cause, effective immediately, escorted from the building by the same security guards he had ordered to escort me. The fraudulent resignation document was officially declared void ab initio in my personnel records. The company agreed to pay the full $200,000 settlement, along with 12 months of continued health insurance coverage for my family. When Robert called with the news, I felt peace. The financial pressure was gone, college tuition was secure, and we had a buffer. I did not waste any time. Over the next 2 weeks, I began applying for logistics management positions at regional distribution firms. I was highly selective, refusing to interview at companies that valued corporate buzzwords over operational experience. My third interview was with Apex Logistics Solutions, a rapidly growing competitor in the automotive parts distribution industry. The interview was arranged by their chief executive officer, Helen Foster. Helen was a seasoned operations veteran who had spent years in corporate leadership. She did not interview me in a polished office. Instead, She met me at their primary distribution center in Indiana and walked me through the warehouse floor. She pointed out the layout, the loading docks, and the inventory tracking monitors, asking for my feedback as we walked. We are expanding our operations into 3 neighboring states, Helen says as we watched a forklift operator move a pallet of brake pads. We need someone who can design our new distribution network from the ground up. I have heard about your reputation at Summit, David. You built a system that ran flawlessly for over a decade. I build systems that work because I understand the products and the people who handle them, I explained. You cannot manage logistics from a spreadsheet in Chicago. You have to understand that Winder transmission components need different storage conditions than brake assemblies. You have to build trust with the suppliers so they deliver on time. Helen smiled, nodding in agreement. That is exactly why we want you, she said. Too many young executives think logistics is just buying a software package and clicking a button. We want someone who understands that real experience is what makes a business successful. A week later, Helen called me with an official offer. Director of Logistics for Apex Logistics Solutions, with a base salary of $125,000, a significant increase from my previous job, and equity participation in the company's growth. I took the weekend to discuss it with Sarah and the boys. We celebrated at our favorite local steakhouse, the relief and excitement in the room, a sharp contrast to the dark Thursday night just 3 weeks prior. On Monday morning, I called Helen and accepted the position. My first day at Apex Logistics Solutions felt different from the very first minute. Helen Foster met me in the lobby personally, walked me through the offices, and introduced me to every team member. There was no rushed orientation, no dumping me at a desk with a stack of outdated manuals. What do you need to be successful here, David? She asked me as we sat in my new office, which looked out over the main shipping yard. Time, I replied. Time to learn your products, your suppliers, and your specific bottlenecks. Building a resilient logistics network is not something that happens overnight. I know, Helen said. That is exactly why we hired you. We need someone who understands that real growth takes time and expertise. The operation was chaotic when I started, but it was a manageable chaos. Parts were scattered across inadequate warehouse spaces. There was no systematic organization, and suppliers were frustrated by inconsistent orders. I had seen all of this before. I knew exactly how to fix it. I spent my first month just learning every product line, every supplier relationship, and every workflow bottleneck. I took detailed notes, asked questions, and built a mental map of how everything connected. Helen checked in weekly, not to micromanage, but to offer support. She would ask what obstacles she could remove or what resources I needed. That was what good management looked like. It was someone who understood that helping employees succeed was the only way a company could succeed. To help me manage the expanding operations, I hired an assistant, Tyler Hayes. He was 26 years old, a recent engineering graduate who was eager to learn. He did not come in assuming he knew everything because of a degree. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about every process. He wanted to understand not just what to do, but why we did it. Training Tyler reminded me of my early days. I showed him how parts moved, how to read supplier patterns, and how to anticipate problems. He absorbed everything, and within 6 months, Tyler managed daily operations while I focused on expansion. Meanwhile, stories filtered back from Summit Distribution Group through industry contacts and former colleagues. After Carter Evans was terminated, the logistics division fell into complete disarray. The replacement candidate they had hired had quit, and they had no choice but to rely on temporary managers who had no understanding of the systems I had spent 11 years building. The consequences were severe. Parts were shipped to the wrong dealers, components degraded in poor storage, and suppliers threatened to cancel contracts. Greg Davis, who supplied specialized transmission components, called me during my second month at Apex. I had worked with Greg for 8 years. David, your old company is a disaster, Greg said, sounding completely frustrated. They keep messing up our orders. They send the wrong specifications, miss delivery deadlines, and nobody in their logistics office can give me a straight answer. Do you have room for another supplier at Apex? I talked to Helen, and we worked out an initial contract. Greg shifted his business to us. A week later, Kevin Hall, who supplied brake systems, called me with the same complaints. He was tired of dealing with the chaos at Summit and wanted to work with someone he trusted. Within 4 months, we acquired contracts with 4 major suppliers. We brought in $8 million in new supplier relationships because they valued reliability, and their partnership had been with me, not the company. Frank Lawson called me around that time, laughing as he spoke. "You are taking all of our suppliers, David," he said. "I am not taking anyone, Frank," I replied. "They are making business decisions based on who can deliver results, just like your company did when they decided to replace me." "Fair point," Frank admitted. "I am glad you found a better place. You deserved better than what happened. Sometimes the worst thing that happens is exactly the push we require." He was right. I had been comfortable at Summit. I was not happy or fulfilled, just comfortable and familiar. I probably would have stayed another 11 years, building systems for people who did not appreciate them. Firing me was the best thing they could have done. My family noticed the difference immediately. It was not just the better salary, though the extra $20,000 helped significantly with Brandon and Luke's college costs. It was my attitude and energy. I did not come home exhausted and stressed. "You seem like yourself," again Sarah told me one evening as we sat on the porch. "Like you are not fighting an uphill battle every day." She was right. The weight of being undervalued, of working harder just to prove I deserved to stay, was gone. A year after my termination, I received a call from Jason Ward, a former receiving dock worker at Summit. "David, I wanted to thank you," Jason said. "I am leaving Summit next week for a better position, and I wanted to reach out before I left." "Thank me for what?" I asked, surprised. "You probably do not remember," Jason said, "but 4 years ago, I made a major mistake in receiving that could have cost me my job. You stayed hours after your shift to help me sort it out and took the blame in the report." I did remember. It had seemed like the right thing to do. "I needed to tell you," Jason continued, "because when you got fired, it sickened all of us. You helped so many of us, and the company just threw you away. We remembered that. A lot of people have left since then, because if they could do that to you, they could do it to anyone. You showed us what leadership looked like." After Jason hung up, I sat in my office, looking out at the trucks moving through the yard. I was just someone who did the work and helped others. But maybe that was real leadership: consistency, integrity, and treating people like they mattered. Today, I oversee logistics for 2 entire regions at Apex. My family is thriving. Brandon and Luke are finishing college without debt, and my career is stronger than ever. The systems I build now are valued, and the people I work with are respected. Carter Evans thought he could reduce my 11 years of dedication to a spreadsheet line, but in trying to destroy my career, he only helped me build a better one.